for any startup founder to ask burning questions that are keeping you up at night and get answers from experts who have worked with hundreds of founders and their teams. Welcome, I'm your host today, Kirk Drage. I'm the CEO and co-founder at LeapSheep. At LeapSheep, we're on a mission to flip the 95% startup failure rate by making expert and personalized startup building guidance accessible, affordable for all founders. So welcome to founders who's joined. It's fabulous to have you here. The show is all about supporting you to get from idea to build a business model hypothesis that can get to product market fit, then validate that it can actually get there before scaling up safely and avoiding the 95% startup failure rate. So thank you to founders who have sent questions in. Please drop any questions that you have during the live stream into the comment section in either LinkedIn or YouTube. Today, I'm absolutely delighted to have Pete Neal with us. Pete started his career in telecommunications, developing mobile payment gateways back before the App Store was even a thing. Quickly realizing that he enjoyed working with people as much as code, he transitioned his career into product management, where he spent the last 18 years building, launching, and growing technology products. More recently, Pete was the founder and CEO of Powerpal, which set out on a mission to help everyday Australians to reduce their energy bills and carbon footprint. After stepping down from his role at Powerpal as CEO last year following an exit to energy retailer Amber Electric, Pete is now helping businesses from seed stage to ASX 200 to achieve product market fit and then implement the sales and growth engine they need to dominate their chosen niche. Pete, it's so awesome to have you here. I've been looking forward to this conversation for ages.
Thank you so much, Kirk. The pleasure's all mine.
Brilliant. So the first question I have to ask you is, so many founders that we work with every day, the goal is to become a post-exit founder. You are a post-exit founder. What does it feel like as a human being to now be a post-exit founder?
That's a great question. So I think I could answer it sort of in a couple of phases. So the first is the day the money hits the bank account, which is just, you've been through this, the stress of scaling a startup, and then the extreme stress of going through a sale process and a due diligence process, which if anybody that goes through that, I can only respect you. And then it's finished, right? And suddenly the due diligence process is done, and you get this chunk of money that lands in your bank account. And this is sort of, your nervous system goes into shock, where it's like, it's done. So there's that sort of instant component. And then there's the excitement of kind of, getting everything merged together. So, we had similar sized teams. Amber were a bit bigger than us at the time of the acquisition, and sort of bringing everybody together and getting to meet everybody. Amber is full of really nice, really smart people. So that's sort of very exciting, and then getting everybody merged together and bringing the vision to life. And then so that's kind of the starting point. And then I suppose the next inflection point is when I stepped down as CEO at Powerpal, which it was time. We got the teams merged together, and was one of my intentions was to move on. And and I did that at the end of Christmas. So I worked up to Christmas and then stepped down in the new year. And you get to kind of January the 2nd, and I sit at my desk and I'm like, I've got 50 of my best mates that I used to work with kind of every day. And then my Slack's not, there's nothing pinging on Slack. What do I do? And so it's a bit of an adjustment phase there. And it was school holidays time. So you get the opportunity to spend some time with the kids and sort of relax into it. And then about 2 months in, I got bored, and that took me down the consulting route, which has been very fun, working with other founders and helping them pick their challenges.
Yeah, fabulous. Really, really good stories. Was there I know after leaving the corporate world, where you're doing a senior job and you get out of that space, there's almost a bit of a grieving process that you go through, and a rebuilding process, because you've got to rebrand yourself, don't you? Have you had that kind of experience?
Yeah, so so I've been through 2 exits. The first exit wasn't my company. It was a company that I joined out of university and stayed with for 13 years. Dialogue telecommunications business, and that business had been around for a fair time before I joined it. And the founder wanted to retire. It was 22 years in, and we'd done pretty well. We we spruced the business up, as you do, and sort of bit of spit and polish, and put the business up for sale, and exiting to one of our largest competitors, Swedish Nasdaq listed company called Sinch. And it was a similar process, right? So you kind of, again, I was part of the senior executive team, so going through that due diligence process. Even though it wasn't my business, you still sort of, the stress wears off on you a little bit.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
again, you sort of end up in this position where everything's changed. Like at one moment, you've been building to this moment for years, and suddenly it's there. And then it's I think rebranding is the word you use, and it's very I think that's pretty much spot on. You've got to then, in the corporate world, I've gone from being a senior executive in a 70-person organization to now trying to work out what my space is in a 1,500-person organization.
Yeah.
And going around and making those new connections, and making building the relationships that you need in order to be successful in that new environment. Again, very, very, very enjoyable, but challenging.
Yeah. So it's such a fascinating thing on the human side. And you've got an amazing career. Looking back at what you've done, you started off at Arm. Amazing, right? It's like to think about where Arm is now.
So I think Arm was they were 400 people or something when I joined. So they'd actually just moved to a bigger office because the team was scaling. And the reason that I ended up there was I'm an engineer by trade. So I did an electronics and software engineering degree at Loughborough University. And I got partway through the second year, and they were trying to teach me kind of system process mapping and things. And I'm a creative, and this sort of wasn't really gelling. And I thought, I need a break from this. So I reached out to Arm and said, I understand you do placement years. Can I come and do a sandwich year with you? To which they said yes. And I was able to join as part of it was a next generation process and modeling function. So we were working on what were the processes going to look like kind of 5 years down the track, and building the tools that we needed to model those. And that was a great experience, being sort of exposed to what engineering really looks like kind of earlier on in the piece, and getting to work. Some of the people in there were the smartest people I've ever met. Being able to work in that environment was very cool. And they also sent me to Austin in Texas for a week to go and sort of showcase the work that we've been doing. I think they all had kids and didn't want to go, but that was an opportunity. You sort of rock up and there's a hire car there, and you've got to drive on the other side of the road. I would have been 20.
Wow.
That was and then having to go in and present to 200 people in their Austin office. It was a really, really cool time.
Yeah, fascinating. You've had an amazing sort of series of stepping stones. You've gone from that hardware experience and understanding the hardware ecosystem. You've done the software thing. You've done product management. You've got senior business experience as an executive, and then and you've had an acquisition experience as well. All of that before you decided to start Powerpal, right?
Yeah, and I had a lot more hair before all that happened. I think the reason that I was very fortunate in that with Dialogue, they've been generous with the executive team with share options. And I'm not sure. I had a young family at that point, and I'm not sure I would have been in a position to take the risk unless I had that. The capital that came through from that exit to sort of roll forward. But I've always worked at the early stage, so taking products through to product market fit. I've had the opportunity to do that 3 times at Dialogue, which we might chat about later. And then I'd always had this creative itch, the want to go and the desire to go and start something from nothing. And Powerpal came about really because partly that itch. So it's an itch I needed to scratch. Can I do this? Was the start of that challenge. But then I also had a problem that came up. So at the time, I wanted to put solar and battery on my house. And I'm a data geek, right? And I do this from first principles. Okay, so where's the data that I can get that helps me understand whether or not putting a battery as well as solar on my roof is the right thing? What size solar system should I have? And I had this smart meter on the side of my house, and I thought, this thing knows, right? It knows whether or not I should get solar. How do I get it to tell me? And so I went down the sort of rabbit hole of trying to work out how you get hold of this data. And there was actually a law called Power of Choice that was introduced to help people get hold, to basically solve this problem. And they brought in this kind of, you as a energy distributor, so the people that own the poles and the wires and the meters must make available this data for people to use it like this. And of course, being in the energy industry, the way they'd done this is they'd said, here's a physical form that you need to print off on our website, and you need to fill that in, sign it with a wet ink signature, put it in the post, and then 10 days later, we'll send you some data in a format that's completely incomprehensible. I was like, okay.
On a floppy disk.
It sort of solved my immediate problem. But I thought, if this is the state of the art, it's not really hard to do something that's a little bit better. And then I got, I'd sort of got my creative itch on again. I'll have a bit of a play with this. And the first thing, I've actually got a picture of it somewhere. The first iteration of Powerpal is a little development board that I bought online, actually stuck with sticky tape on the front of the electricity meter. So it basically acted like a data logger, because there's an optical port on the front of the meter you can read this data from. And so I logged two days worth of data, then peeled the thing off and plugged it in to see what you could get. And the data that I got was much richer than the data that they'd sent me in this incomprehensible format. The board cost, even retail, that was like $10 for that. And so I thought, well, this might be something. So
I found the problem we're pursuing here.
Yeah, it's that sort of the combination of having that capital windfall, having the itch to scratch, and that feeling like that was the right time to do it, and having built up skills in my product management career. I've been doing product management for 13 years there. I could sort of see line of sight. And then having this problem that I thought I could solve, that was really the genesis of Powerpal.
Yeah, fascinating. So, one of the things I'd love to talk through today is that process of taking Powerpal through to product market fit, because you've been on that journey. I think that's one of the things that really struck me when we first met. Is I talked about our process for supporting founders, and like everything that we're kind of recommending, you're like, yep, yeah, that's exactly what we did, and yes, that's what we did there, and yes, that's what we did there, and it's like, this is brilliant. You're like the perfect retrospective case study for the way to do things. So I'd love to sort of walk through that, and I think just to show visually what I'm talking about here. This is what we call the disruptive innovation journey. We break up the path to product market fit into four sort of key phases: pre-revenue market validation, initial pilots. This is the Y Combinator, do things manually stage. Then there's really pursuing product market fit and getting your demand gen and your efficiency scale working until you prove that you get to product market fit and then scale up. So maybe let's just walk through a couple of those steps. And so I think you've sort of started to tell us there a little bit about finding vision market fit, where you saw this opportunity. What else did you do at that stage? Did you sort of research the global market? Did you look at the national market? How did you sort of figure out to go from, yes, I've stuck something on the side of my meter with some sticky tape, to I really think this is a financially viable, clever opportunity?
Sure. So I think the first thing is, I'm an engineer by trade, and my view is there is nothing that hasn't already been solved by somebody else. Unless you're sort of at the bleeding edge of deep tech, then you're really looking at innovation, not invention. Yeah. So the first thing I did was just go and have a look at what other products were on the market. And they really fell into three categories, or maybe two broad categories. So you had the smart meter that was already there, and its ability to go and sort of send off and get your data in the post. And then there were people that had already seen this problem and tried to solve it. Yeah. So we've got products that were like a private smart meter. So they're like a little, it looks like an electricity meter essentially that goes in your meter box, but you have control over it, not the energy retailer. And these are fantastic products. They can do lots of things that Powerpal isn't able to do, like sort of disaggregate your appliances, do channels and all this sort of thing. But they're expensive. So they cost about $300 for a good one. And then you've got to pay an electrician to come out and install the thing as well, because they have to be wired in. So there's a sort of barrier to entry. Yeah, great product, but barrier to entry because of the cost. And then at the other extreme, there were these what they call in-home displays, which look like a little calculator that sits on your bench top, and it's basically got something very similar to that little dev board that I had that sits in your energy meter box doing the data logging, and then it's got a radio link that sends it to this little calculator thing. And they're really cheap. You're looking at kind of $40, and you can install them yourself. You just kind of clip it on, but the user experience is not great. So again, there's a kind of there was a market barrier there at that spot. So I thought, okay, so yeah, we're looking for kind of at this point problem market fit, and I think it looks like there's a gap there. So the next thing I did was desk research. So at the time, there was a lot of noise going on about energy bills being very high, and the consumer, the ACCC were doing a big project, sort of digging into why energy prices had gone up so much. And we could do a whole other podcast on that, so I won't go into it. And then there was also Alan Finkel's roadmap to net zero. So Alan Finkel was he's the government's chief scientist, and he'd done this sort of roadmap to net zero. And through all of these documents, there was this kind of, we need to get hold of the energy data, because the energy data is going to be the thing that helps unlock some of these new opportunities. And so I thought, okay, well, if other smart people have seen this problem as well, maybe we're onto something. So then you start thinking, okay, what's the way forward that gets us out of this little dev board into something that's looks enough like that expensive kind of bring your own smart meter solution, but a cost point that is similar to it's not going to be a barrier to entry. So then we pivoted to looking at things that look like that aren't in the energy space. And at the time, there was a bunch of products that were entering the market around home automation that had Bluetooth as their kind of backing protocol. And these products didn't need wire; they don't need power, because Bluetooth is very power efficient. But they had real range. So you're not talking about Bluetooth as in like your mouse and your keyboard and things like that. It's had kind of 100-meter range on them. And so I thought, well, maybe we could take the transmitter bit of those the calculator style things and use that, put Bluetooth into that, because my phone talks Bluetooth, and then we take like the $1,000 of equipment you've already got, which is your smartphone and your energy meter, connect the two together with this really low cost bit of hardware, and maybe we could build a product around that. So that was really kind of the start of maybe there could be a business here.
So that was kind of your solution hypothesis at that.
Exactly. So we didn't know. I'd only got this kind of dev board attached to my meter box to be any point of validation there, but we sort of there was enough there to make it an interesting enough problem space to take it to the next level.
Yeah, fascinating. So just to recap some of the things that you talk about. So the market research that you've done there, and when we talk about market research, we include that competitive research. So you did some competitive research, the technology research to figure out what technology might be appropriate to put a solution together. You did that industry research to see where the industry was kind of at. And then you created that business model hypothesis, which is, well, I think these are the people, the problem. I think this is kind of the solution. So you had the bits to have a hypothesis for maybe there's a vision here and a market that needs this vision to be built.
Yeah, and I think when you talk about the business case hypothesis, at that point it was really ethereal. So we knew there was a problem, and we thought it was a problem that was painful enough that someone would pay for it. But we didn't quite know who that would be at that point. There were a bunch of different ways you could take it. You could ask the consumer to pay for it. You could ask solar installers to pay for it, because maybe that would help them sell their products. You could ask the energy retailers to pay for it. So we didn't know where the business case was going to take us, we kind of had to go through the next iteration to be able to start to learn enough to work out which way that would go.
Yeah. And I think that's a really important point, that at this point of the journey, you don't need to know the answer to that question, because that's the next step, as you're saying. And so it's enough just to say, look, I think this problem space is big enough and it's meaningful enough that maybe there's going to be someone there that's going to be interested enough to pay, but we don't know who that is yet. We need to go do that. And that's the next stage that we call problem market fit. Also, we call that user research. Now we have to get out of the building, as Steve Blank likes to say, and get out there and start talking to people. So how did you go about figuring out who was going to pay and how urgent and painful their problem was?
Yeah, so we had this kind of hypothesis that if we could build this thing, that people would find value from it. So the first thing to do was just get it in front of anybody in the most basic form that we could, to get some feedback. So what we did was we bought some more dev boards, but they had Bluetooth on them. And I dusted off my compiler from ages ago and wrote some very basic firmware to run on these dev boards, and wrote the very first version of the Powerpal app, which was, you'd be very embarrassed if you saw it now. It's literally kind of a few lines of text. And we built 10 of these things. I bought 10 dev boards and put them in. I went to JCar and bought these little kind of waterproof boxes, and just shoved them in there. And then I gave them out to friends and family and said, will you let me stick this random thing on your energy please, and give me some feedback on it. And the feedback from that was kind of, oh, this is quite interesting. I've learned some stuff about, my that my air conditioner costs more to run than the lights do, and Pete, it looks sort of kind of vaguely interesting. So it's like, okay, that's another proof point where we've actually spoken to somebody and they've said, that seems reasonable. Yeah. But then we've got to work out, okay, we've got to at least now at this point have some sort of line of sight to a business model. Otherwise, what are we aiming for? So I thought through the desk research that I'd seen, there have been people that have been successful in selling energy engagement products, the in-home display pieces, to energy retailers as part of their kind of engagement project. So I thought, well, let's try and sell to an energy retailer. But of course, I didn't have any contacts in the energy industry. So we joined the Energy Lab accelerator program. That's a great organization. Helps early stage businesses and scale up businesses actually to better engage with industry. And I joined them because Origin Energy was their lead sponsor for the program. And so I thought, I'll join this and see if I can get some social license to sell this thing to Origin. And so we went along and just did like a desk pitch essentially of what we'd done, and I had some results, some survey results from the 10 people that 10 friends and family that had taken the product. And Origin said, that looks really interesting. And I said, well, what can you do to kind of help it along? And they said, well, we'll give you a 60K MOU, which basically says if you build it, we'll take them. Which was the equivalent of 1,000 devices. I think we sold them at $60 ago. Yeah. And so I thought, okay, well, that's a pretty strong proof point, right? If Origin Energy are putting up this, putting their money where their mouth is, this seems good. So that was enough to kind of go, okay, we're going to invest a little bit of our own capital now. So we bootstrapped essentially for the first 18 months of Powerpal's life. And we basically took these dev boards that we built in the big plastic boxes, and we shrunk them down into 3D printed production-ish looking models. Yeah, right. We spent $20,000 or something with an industrial designer to pull together the kind of design for the thing, and then he 3D printed these.
So what was the goal with these? How are you going to deploy these?
So it was just to learn more about the market. So we had no idea if we could actually build this thing at that size, if the range would work in other people's homes. And you're
sort of moving on to what we would call the solution concept. Yeah. So you're really trying to validate that the hardware could do what you needed to do. You weren't selling a product yet, where you had no.
Yeah. So yes. So I think you're right. We'd sort of moved out of the problem problem validation phase, and that the milestone was getting that MOU with Origin. That was what gave us the confidence to move forward. And now we're checking that the solution we've got actually meets what we've promised Origin, right?
Yeah.
And so we shrunk this thing down, and we 3D printed 50 of these devices, and they put them together in my garage. My mother-in-law helping putting these things together. And then we got in touch with a guy that was running an energy efficiency program, and said, "Can we tack? We're not going to charge you anything. Can we just tack these things on to the program?" And we spruced up the app. And the version of the app at that point, I got one of my friends to put the UI together. And he'd just come back from Japan, and he was energized in like anime and all this sort of thing. And he made this little dancing robot that kind of danced faster when you were using more energy. And I thought, that's super cool. We're going to go with that for this pilot. So I put this together, pushed out these the 50 devices. And that was the first time we'd given them to people we didn't know, right? So this was the next round of proof points. So I wanted the feedback from those people that this was something, genuinely something they wanted, and we wanted to make sure the thing actually functioned. Basic functionality was what we expected it to be. And the feedback was, so we got good feedback on the user experience. They hated the robot. They're like, just get rid of the robot, or we want some like figures that tell us what our energy is doing. So that was a shame. So the robot died a death at that point. But we also learned a lot about fitting things to people's energy meters. So there are actually quite a lot of different varieties of energy meter out there, and getting the product to fit each one was we had to create some different brackets and things like that. And then they had water ingress in them, and we had to sort of sort that out. So we learned a lot about what the finished product needed to be. So I guess that would be pilot market fit at that point. I guess just for getting into some testing.
So did you take the money from Origin at that point?
So the next stage, so you can't ship a product until you've gone through a whole bunch of different. We'd taken the money up front because I managed to negotiate that they give us the money first, so we could run the stuff. Ship any product to Origin until we'd step through a couple more things. So you can't just ship 3D printed products, to people. When you're selling them, you've got to go through what's called RCM compliance. So you've got to get safety compliance done. You've got to get radio interference compliance done. And in order to do that, you have to have a finished product. So we then raised our first round of external capital, $150,000, which was enough to get 5,000 production devices done.
So now you're moving into building a pilot that you can actually sell your first unit.
So this is probably past the pilot that didn't scale, right? So the pilot that didn't scale was we're getting my mother-in-law to build them in the garage. This is taking it into something that could scale if it goes successfully. And so I had to go over to Taiwan. We learned a lot about how you make plastics and injection molding and how you do production electronics, and had to take a lot of vendors out for hot pot, things like that, to build a whole new
drink a lot of rice wine.
Exactly, sort of navigate electronics supply chains.
What was your mindset at this point in terms of your volumes? Because I know in the hardware space, like 10,000 units a month is kind of the cutoff for interesting price breaks, right?
Well,
what was your thought process at that point?
So you imagine, if you're going along and asking for 5,000 units from a vendor in Taiwan, and they've got to set up a whole kind of production line to do it, they're not particularly interested in doing that. So I had this sort of slide with this hockey stick. We're going to be shipping, 30,000
units next year.
So we were kind of setting it up so that it could scale, but we weren't over investing. So there were some bits there that were, they were suitable for doing a small production run, but wouldn't have scaled into to mass manufacture. We were setting it up because we're at this point, you're kind of backing yourself, right? At some point, you've got to put your chips on the table, and we got enough signals at this point to be putting this thing into production. So it's like, those injection molding, that injection molding equipment was $100,000, but that was enough to make 300,000 devices before you had to renew it. So we could have done it cheaper and done less, but we're sort of backing ourselves a bit at this point. So that got us through we manufactured the first 5,000, got through all the EMF tests and things, the regulatory stuff that we need to do. And then we shipped to Origin, right? So we shipped our 1,000 devices to Origin and they start piloting it. And in the meantime, Mitch, who joined as a co-founder, the CCO, was running around talking to all the other energy retailers. And we actually signed up AGL, Alinta, and Simply Energy, NDA, for pilots in parallel, right? So we're sort of, we've gone around and sold the vision. At this point, we've got the finished product.
How big is the team at this stage?
Just 3 of us at this.
3,
yeah. So we're kind of running around doing these pilots, and then the data comes back from the pilots. Everybody sort of enjoyed that. Very similar to the kind of earlier stage results that we got from the pilots that don't scale. And then so I sent Mitch back in and I'm like, right, yeah, this is it, right? We've got to get the deal. This is scaling up to millions. It's going to be awesome. You remember the conversation with the commercial guy from Origin Energy, because they move you on from their innovation people into their division. It's like, right, I get it. So your product helps people understand how they're wasting energy in their home, which helps them reduce their carbon emissions and their energy bills by 15% on average. I'm like, you got it. And he's like, you do realize we make money by selling people energy.
That's right. You're just reducing our revenue by 15%, was it?
Yeah, that's it. Origin put us in their board, their ASX board pack. I don't know, you can go back and see it in 2018, I think it was. They wanted to show the innovation, but what became very obvious was that wasn't the biggest problem. The biggest problem was they were very risk averse. And scaling up something which is like a startup in a shed with 3 people, even though the results are good, they weren't going to buy it. So that was
I think I just want to pick up a point you say there, because I've been burnt badly by this before, which is this transition when you're working with large companies from the innovation team to the commercial team.
Yeah,
it's a huge issue, and we had investors involved, and we're all very excited that we're running these pilots in these massive Fortune 500 companies. We're in Victoria's Secret, and we're in Tesco, and we're in Lowe's and Starbucks, and we're all these great companies. But what we didn't appreciate at the time, we were too naive, is that every one of those companies we were working with their innovation teams. Well, and our investors were so excited that we had all these big brand names, we had all these pilots deployed and whatever. And then when the time comes to then get into the commercial team, it's like, oh yeah, no, we're not rolling this across all of our stores. You've got to be kidding.
Yeah,
that's a huge issue, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And we heard, when we went back to Energy Lab with our kind of tale of woe, and it's like, this is your major partner. Yeah, they should be sort of backing us. And they're like, no, we've seen this before. We were seeing this again. There were other people that had gone through this through the program that had hit the same roadblock. Yeah. Really, what Origin wanted was they wanted the learnings first and foremost, but then they wanted finished. The products they were actually launching were coming from the US or the Europe, which had been already rolled out by other utilities
at scale.
Had already taken the risk, and it's still an ongoing problem in the clean tech space. A lot of innovation happening there, but kind of how do you get to the scale up stage? How do you let's sort of bridge that?
It's a big problem in the startup space generally, that startups can end up subsidizing research and development and innovation for big companies and government.
Yeah,
and sometimes big companies and government think they're doing the startups a favor, and they are in the right context. But you've really got to get the context right to really make sure you understand what your path is. And I think startups get really easily excited that we've got a project, we've got our first project. Okay, we're going. But just being able to sort of dampen that excitement and get a little bit more substance behind the demand validation and the readiness based on where you're at is a piece of advice that we're always giving out to startups. And it's really hard to follow that as a founder, because you're so excited about you've got this opportunity that you never thought you'd get there, and you finally got there. And it's not always as fabulous as you think it is.
Yeah. And I think, we were probably a bit naive of pushing so hard in there. And what we should have been doing was making relationships with the people that we're going to buy later down the track, and possibly just not us knowing what that process looked like. But also, you're resource constrained. You're trying to set up a factory in Taiwan as well as do all of this other stuff. There's only so many hours in the day. And it's probably on us as much as the retailers that we weren't doing that validation piece ourselves.
Yeah. So that the point there you mentioned is super important, because right back at the user research stage, where you'd sort of given the device to sort of 20 of your friends, it wasn't a product. So it was like, I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm just trying to learn, from you what your experience with the device and whether it's useful and if it solves a problem that you care about. Doing more user research at that stage is something that we would generally recommend, and going out and getting a larger cross section of people. And really, what you want out of that stage is, are individuals willing to pay?
Yeah.
Because as you're kind of alluding to, when you work with these big companies and they're a channel to market for you, then you rely on them to do the selling and the marketing. And as a startup, you end up having very little power, because you're like, well, here's my thing. Will you just buy my thing in volume, please? And the decision's all up to them. You've got really no leverage. Whereas if you've gone out and spoken to the market, and you've got, here's 50 customers that I've spoken to, and they're all willing to pay, $50 a month, or whatever the number is, like, well, now you've got the power, because you've demonstrated that the markets are there. And you can say, well, I'll just take my market demand that I've validated and go to the next guy if you're not really ready to pull the trigger on this. Yeah. And so I think this is a really, really important learning for founders, is if you want to have more of a balance of power when working with larger companies, what gives you that balance of power is knowing their customers better than they do.
Yeah.
And making sure you do that work.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a nice segue into kind of what happened next, I suppose. So, at that point we're kind of panicking a little bit, and so we're starting to do kind of LinkedIn outreach to try and reach other people in the energy retailers to do with retention. I started talking to local councils because I thought, they'd got energy efficiency initiatives, and I thought maybe we could buddy up with one of their programs, and it was all going very slowly, and I went back and sort of, I was sort of reflecting on all the stuff that I'd read kind of earlier in the piece. And a lot of the programs that had worked with energy retailers had been not because the energy retailer wanted to do it, it was because of some external influence. So some target for energy efficiency reduction, or they had to spend some percentage of their revenue back into
tick box on a board report
program. And so I'd started researching what those programs were in Australia, and uncovered that there are programs for energy efficiency. Getting a bit of noise on the appearance as well.
Just check, is that better?
No, it's still there. Just try music. Yeah, that's got rid of it.
Back again?
Worse, unfortunately. I'll keep talking.
How about that? Is that
perfect. That's fixed it. Yep.
Good.
So where was I? So we were canvassing around trying to kind of find other markets. And I went back to my research and kind of what is it we've missed? Other people have managed to do this. And so okay, let's see if there are schemes like the energy efficiency schemes that we could piggyback on in Australia. And we found that there what they call white certificate schemes that had basically been focused on introducing energy efficient lighting into Australia. And been a huge driver, people moving off incandescent and halogen bulbs onto LED globes. And so I started trying to reach out to people in these schemes to talk to them about our thing. And you can imagine how hard that is. You get pretty short shrift. Until we met this gentleman called Jack Brown, which was a bit of another kind of sort of one of these things you just hang on long enough until you get a bit of luck and you meet a Jack. Jack was a very nice guy for a startup, and just wanted to meet us. He was very interested in how the innovation could help with energy efficiency and connected home. He was very interested in that, so he just wanted to have the chat. But then he was also doing a project called the Smart Meter Benefits Realization Project, where they rolled out smart meters in Victoria at a cost of $4.5 billion and the Auditor General was on their back to kind of show some sort of consumer benefit from this, because nobody was accessing the data. And so it was like a bit of a confluence of things coming together. So we went in and gave Jack this pitch, and then he said, "Oh, yeah, this looks great." And then we gave him our tale of woe about how we tried to sell to energy retailers, and how we were all just about to go and get other jobs. And he said, "Well, we've actually got a new a category for these in-home displays that nobody's ever really touched on. And your product isn't an in-home display, but it might be close enough. Why don't you submit it and see whether or not you can get it approved?" And so we did. And I don't know what happened in the background. I'd like to think that maybe Jack advocated for us, but I don't know. Anyway, 6 months later, we got this device approved onto this government scheme. And that meant that we had 2.5 million homes we could give the thing away to for free. And we made $100 for each one that we gave away.
Yeah, wow.
And the kicker was the energy retailers had to fund it, because it was an energy efficiency program funded by the energy retailers. So it's like we've got another
back up the origin and say hi.
But then, of course, so that's a win. And then, of course, at that point, they don't help you with any of the marketing. The funding's there. And we'd never done a B2C business before. So then we had to kind of go back to that concept market fit, right back to that point. Work out, okay, how are we actually going to bring this thing to market?
Yeah. And so tell me about that. What was the demand gen like? How did you go about scaling the demand side?
So the first thing was, okay, I'm an engineer, no problem's not already been solved before. People have done this with lighting. We can do it with energy monitors, right? So how do people do the lighting? They knock on your door and they say, "It's time to get your lights upgraded to LED. We'll be here. We'll be here this afternoon to get it done." So we thought, right, door knocking. That's the way to do it. So we piggybacked along with an existing door knocking outfit, and I actually spent 2 weeks in the field knocking on doors, learning what it takes to convince somebody to have these products installed. And we found a few things. So firstly, they want to know it's free. Is it really going to cost me anything? So you've got to convince them that there's no out-of-pocket cost to them. They want to be definitely sure it's not going to change their energy retailer. Quite why people are so loyal to their energy retailer, I still don't know, but that was a key point. And then they kind of wanted to know, okay, well, what's it going to do for me? And the pitch there we found was not it's going to save you on your energy bills, because people didn't really believe that. It was, we're going to help you understand why your energy bill's so high. And then there's sort of the inference is you're going to do something about it and reduce your bills. So those were the kind of key points that we took away from the door knocking. So we then started hiring our own door knockers and training them up on the pitch and giving them the collateral and things they needed to go at. And it went okay with the door knockers, but it wasn't really scaling, because the door knockers, firstly, it was quite expensive, because the door knockers weren't paying a base and then they weren't paying a commission. So they were eating in a lot into our margins. But then we also had problems with the door knockers were salespeople. They weren't sort of installers. So when they get faced with an electricity meter and a meter box they hadn't seen before, they get stuck and then they need help, or they try and do it and then it wouldn't work. So there was a whole bunch of friction in that model. So what we ended up doing was splitting the marketing from the installation, so that we would do the marketing online, and a lot of our marketing ended up being social media. We ended up doing TV marketing in the end. And we had an installation team that would run around and fulfill all of these orders. And we had to build this kind of traveling salesman booking system to manage all of that. And at that point, we started to get into a bit of a rhythm. So we got a repeatable CPA for getting the bookings in. We had a repeatable volume of bookings to actual installations. And then we had a model where we were very, very efficient at getting these guys to run around and install the products, and people were there when they said they were going to. So we're like, this is starting now to look like product market fit.
Yeah, right. And what sort of time frame was it between when you sort of started that door knocking to you started to sort of really figure out a funnel that actually worked? Was that like 6 months, 12 months?
No, we were iterating very quickly. So I would say we ruled out the door knocking within about 6 weeks of getting started.
Yeah.
It's reasonably obvious it wasn't going to scale. And then we started experimenting with this kind of split model and trying to work out how we were going to drive the engine. We started with people on the phone doing the phone bookings. So people would like put their phone number into a form on Facebook, and then we ring them up. And we sort of gradually managed to automate bits of that I'd say that was another 2 to 3 months by the time we'd sort of got that to the point where it was efficient enough that we could start throwing more fuel on, and we knew that there was going to be a flywheel that started rolling.
Yeah.
And then COVID hit. So we just got to the point where it was just starting to tick up. And and we got 3 installers in the field, and we're just about to hire a bunch more.
And just to be clear, your guys weren't selling it because you weren't taking any money from the customers, were you?
No, it's given away for free. We got the money on the back end. We had to take photos and get them to fill in a form to show that we'd done it.
But I just want to reflect on that door knocking thing, because this is something that we advise founders to do all the time. Although you said that it didn't work and it wasn't scalable, we recommend doing exactly that. Like have high touch, high expense conversations with your first 100 customers, because you just learn so much. Like if you had gone straight to the online thing, I'm sure you wouldn't have known what the objections were, how to position things properly, all those things you would have learned through that door knocking experience.
Yeah.
And you probably go, well, that wasn't a very efficient way and it didn't scale, but actually it was the best use of your time and capital.
Yeah.
To learn the lessons that you needed to do things in a scalable way.
Yeah, so it didn't match with our hypothesis. So we thought it was to save on bills. It's not. Yeah. It's the understand your energy bill. Yeah. And the other thing that was free, we thought that was a big thing we needed to push. So that was kind of validated. But the other thing that came out was that people really wanted to know, has somebody else had this installed? So we'd say, you're kind of we've just done everybody else on the street. Now we're going to do you. So this idea of kind of building social proof as well ended up being a big theme all the way through as we scale Powerpal. And I'll talk a little bit about the challenges we had there as we started to scale. But COVID was like, we just got there, and we'd started, we'd scaled the team. We got just taken out a lease on an office. And we hired an operations team to sort of start operationalizing all this. And then, we had the longest COVID lockdown of anywhere in the world in Victoria. So we sort of hunkered down. We had to lay off the staff, which was terrible. I sort of, we just basically mothball everything and wait. And we had some wins on the way through. Like we got promoted on an ABC program called Fight for Planet A, and we sold a bunch of products online. Which helped keep things ticking over. And then, so we had this terrible luck, right? We'd had, so terrible luck with the energy retailers. Then we'd solved it. We got this deal with the Victorian government. Then we had COVID. And then we had the biggest win of the entire journey, which was there was Jim, the guy from Jim's Mowing, was making a big fuss about how he couldn't have his guys out mowing people's lawns and hedges and everybody's garden. Right. And so they brought in an exception for solo outdoor trades activities. And we were a solo outdoor trades activity. And we sort of redid the signing of the consent form to be social distance. So we did it all sort of remotely. And then, we sort of relaunched. And I thought, this is just like a gift from God, right? There was like us and Coles that was open for a period of time. Everybody's at home to see our ads. Everybody's at home to have the product installed. I'm like, we've just got to go. And so I rang around my founder friends.
You booked an appointment with the whole state to be home. So you can do it.
It's like, it's just, everybody needs to be home for like 4 weeks while we install your energy monitor. And so I rang around my founder friends and said, I've got this, this has happened. What do I do? And they said, you need to get into PR, get some PR out. And so I said, who do I need to talk to? And they said, you need to go to talk to this guy from City PR who will get you on, he can get you on TV. And so I rang Tim Allerton from City PR. And literally the next day, he had this lady in my house from a current affair, filming all about the Powerpal journey. And he went around to one of my mates' houses and filmed there. And we were on a current affair 2 days later, and we were the first piece, and it was a 6-minute like advertorial for Powerpal, and it crashed the servers. We got so many signups, and so we've like gone from like sort of holding on by our fingernails to just having so much business we don't know what to do with it. And then of course we had to train all these installers remotely because it's put together this kind of video training program and get them out there. And that was what really set us up for the next round of success. And at that point we knew we had some level of product market fit. People wanted it. As long as we could get the message out, we were off to the races essentially.
Yeah. What a story! What a story! Wow, so many twists and turns, aren't there, during the whole journey? And I say that founders all the time, you got to survive before you can thrive, right?
That's it. There's one more that might be interesting to the listeners, which is we actually had. So obviously, when everybody went back to work, we had to pivot our marketing a little bit to adjust for that. And one of the things we found was that social proof thing was something that we hadn't doubled down on when we first went to market. And just people were just desperate to do anything during COVID. And when that subsided, we started to get these comments on our ads saying things like, this is a scam, nothing on Facebook's free, I got screwed over by the guy that did my lights, this sort of thing. And so we started doing a campaign where if we asked people if we could take a photo with the installer and holding up their Powerpal user guide. And so every installation, we'd ask that question, and then the installers would send the photos back to the marketing team. And we just set up this remarketing campaign that just hit people with like hundreds of smiling, happy people that had the Powerpal installed. Yeah. And that was what it needed to get that boost, and that sustained us for years. There's that approach, just keeping that fresh. And that social proof, it was really necessary for people to trust the offer.
Yeah, it's that middle of the funnel, isn't it? It's like the whole point of the middle of your funnel is to build trust and credibility.
Yeah,
if it's not there, the transaction won't happen, and it depends on the price of your offer as to how much trust and credibility you've got to build. But as you've just described, even a free offer, the bar's not zero, is it? You've got to build that trust and credibility even for free.
Exactly. And at the top of the funnel, we recut that current affair piece into a 15 and 30 second ad because it's news content, right? So that fits into the exception for fair use on copyright. So we recut that and used that as top of the funnel material. Even that wasn't enough to get people through. They needed that. Even though it had been on the news, it helped, but you needed that next level of people like you have already had this product. So smiling, happy people that people could resonate with. That was what it needed.
Yeah, great story. Yeah, it really, like, as you say, you iterated so much there. There's so much learning that you fold back in, and how much do you think the team that you had in your prior experience really helped you with that speed of progress? Because if you don't iterate quick enough, you burn a lot of time and capital, don't you?
Yeah. And can I put my hand on heart and say we iterated quick enough? I'm not sure. We spent a lot of time talking to energy retailers, but I think the process came naturally. It's interesting, sort of about halfway through my career in telco, I had this light bulb moment where I was like, actually, I'm a product manager. I think a lot of people kind of fall into this where. My title was general manager, I think, at the time. But what I was doing was trying to work through all of these problems, and we did a number of different pivots. We pivoted from mobile content and mobile billing, and then the iPhone came out, and we're like, that's going to be a problem for that market. So we'll pivot into the enterprise market, and then we pivoted again into selling to telcos, selling solutions to telcos. And each of those times, I'd had to go through this process of kind of learning and failing and trying to work out what the stages were. So I think I just sort of muscle memory by the time we got around to doing Powerpal. It was just like, well, I've screwed it up so many times before. I know some of the mistakes at least not to make.
Yeah, so valuable that experience as a product manager. I think that's one of the one of the most important capabilities and competencies you can have on a team, because it's a lot about the commercialization of a technology, as opposed to just building a solution is one challenge, but it's what do they say? It's a necessary but not sufficient one.
Yeah.
You also got to build a business model around it, and that's where the product manager and the skill set that you learn as a product manager really gets you thinking about that side. How are you going to market it? How are you going to sell it? How are you going to do that affordably? How big's the market? Et cetera, et cetera. Well, Pete, I can't believe we're at time already. It's been a fabulous conversation. Thanks so much for joining us and sharing your journey. It's been absolutely insightful to hear, the challenges that you've gone through and you've had to overcome, and it's just such a common story with so many founders having to overcome the same sort of challenges. So hopefully, some of our listeners have got some great insights from your journey and your experience. So. Where can people find you if they want to work with you at Partners for Growth? They can go on to LinkedIn, or they can find you at pete@partnersforgrowth.com.au. Can you tell us who might be your ideal client?
Yeah, so I kind of I work with anybody that's got the problem that I'm able to solve, which is really if you're in that position where you're trying to get your product into market and you've got a whole bunch of kind of bumps in the road that you need to get from that MVP to a product that you can actually sell to customers. That's a journey that I've been through a lot of times on my career, and there are some mistakes there that I've seen other founders make that perhaps you don't need to make yourself.
You can help them avoid.
And then once you've got through that piece, getting the messaging right and ensuring that you do have that product market fit. Just again, it's sort of I've got some war wounds from having been through those experiences, which I'm finding founders are finding useful. Just sit down, have a chat through what the challenges are, and then if you're resource constrained, I'm around to help as well. I really enjoy working with smart founders. So if you're in that space, really that early stage space where you're looking to go from MVP into something that you can commercially scale, would absolutely love a chat.
Fabulous, excellent. And similarly, at LeapSheep, if you're interested in help and support with your startup, we support founders to get from idea to product market fit. And the best way to work with us in the initial stages is to do what's called a startup builder strategy session. We offer those strategy sessions to really help diagnose what the challenges are for particular founders and their teams. Every founder is unique and different, based on their history and background. And as we've talked about with your background, Pete, if you've got a product management background versus you haven't, if you've got business management experience versus you haven't, if you've got technology experience versus you haven't, all kinds of things need to change in terms of the way that you navigate your journey. And the startup builder strategy session is a great way to figure out what is the right thing for you and your startup in your situation. So if you're a founder, check that out. So thanks again, Pete, and we'll be back in 2 weeks with another fabulous show.